Everything is energy, and that's all there is to it. Albert Einstein. But there were things he never spoke about publicly. Things he whispered in letters, hid in journals, encoded into formulas. Not about science, but about the boundary between worlds, which, strangely enough, he crossed not in a laboratory, but deep within himself. In this video, you'll discover why Einstein himself believed that consciousness does not originate here, on Earth. Why he saw the mind as just a temporary vessel for something far more complex, something that came from elsewhere, and how he tried to leave clues so we could recognize it within ourselves. This is not fantasy. This is not a conspiracy theory. This is a reconstruction of fragments, letters, private conversations, personal reflections that were hidden from the public for decades. A story about 3 signs that, according to Einstein, reveal you've already touched the beyond, even if you didn't realize it. He wasn't a mystic. He was a scientist, obsessed with logic, formulas, and verification. But even he once admitted that, during moments of deep thought or dreaming, he would leave the body and see answers not with his eyes, but with something else. He wrote about it in letters to his sister, in manuscripts that were never officially published. And each time he hinted, consciousness is not local. We are simply receiving the signal. Have you ever felt a strange sense that you're here by accident? That you're watching the world not as a participant, but as an observer, as if you've come from somewhere else? That your thoughts don't come from your head, but from beyond, suddenly, as if through a subtle channel? If so, this video might explain more than you expect. In the next few minutes, you'll learn why Einstein was afraid to publish his thoughts about the nature of the soul, what he meant by reaching beyond matter, the 3 signs that your mind has already touched the other side, and why he believed that the scientific explanation of consciousness is just a shell, hiding something far more complex. This video isn't about physics. It's about the thin line between logic and intuition, between matter and what came before it, between I am this body and I am something more. Buckle up. We're about to uncover what Einstein never dared to publish in his lifetime. And if something in this feels strangely familiar, maybe it's because you've already touched it yourself. We know Einstein as the father of modern physics, the man who broke the mold, who reshaped how we think about time, space, and matter. But far fewer people know that, toward the end of his life, he returned not to the formula EMC2, but to a deeper question. What is consciousness? And where did it come from? In private letters stored in the Princeton University archives, unpublished for decades, Einstein wrote, "I cannot believe that consciousness originates in the brain. Rather, the brain is a screen onto which something external is projected. Not light, but code." For a scientist, the world revered as a rational genius. Such a statement borders on heresy. He never published these thoughts, but he thought about them constantly. In his notebooks, strange diagrams appear, where consciousness is depicted not as a process inside the head, but as an interaction with a space beyond time. He called it beyond the observable. In the 1950s, Einstein frequently corresponded with philosopher Paul Schilp, a friend and science theorist. In one letter, Einstein confessed, "When I think about my greatest discoveries, I don't feel I made them. They came instantly, as if from a void. I merely recorded them. I was a conduit, not an author." He avoided mystical language, but the essence was clear. he did not believe that consciousness was limited to the physical brain. In fact, he was convinced that we are connected to something that exists beyond time and space, and that for some people this connection is active. Why did he stay silent? Because he knew scientists would not understand him, and society would be afraid. After World War II, when the world began to treat science as a new religion, talking about out-of-body consciousness could ruin anyone's reputation. And yet, Einstein continued exploring the topic in his private notes. He wrote, "Everything in this world has its mathematical logic, but there is something that cannot be described with equations. It is a deep certainty that you are not just a part of the world, but something that observes it from the outside." That outside was the key word. He called it the observer's threshold, the point at which you no longer perceive yourself as a body, where perception becomes neutral, non-personal, formless. According to his secretary, Helen Dukas, Einstein would sometimes suddenly fall silent in the middle of a conversation and seemingly drop out of reality. He wouldn't respond, wouldn't move, just stared at one spot. When asked what it was, he said, "I wasn't here. I was observing from afar. Everything looked different, even time." He also described dreams in which he didn't see events, but formulas, as if his consciousness was receiving data from another dimension. He said those images couldn't be put into words, but they led to the understandings he would later record as equations. What was he trying to say? That there are 3 levels of perception: physical perception, through the senses; mental perception, through interpretation; language, memory, unknown perception, when you are no longer you, but observation still exists. He didn't call it the soul. He didn't call it God. He wrote, "Perhaps it's simply another form of energy, one we have not yet learned to measure. But it exists, and I feel it, not as a man, but as a field." A few months before his death, he wrote, "I fear we've become too obsessed with matter. We've forgotten it is the effect, not the cause." And in that moment, he came closer than ever to a forbidden truth: the idea that the human mind may be part of a system outside this world, not a product of evolution, but an extension of a source beyond space and time. If you've ever felt like the world doesn't fully seem real, if you've caught a moment when everything around you suddenly freezes, if you've felt your thoughts arriving not from within, but from somewhere else, then maybe you've already been to the edge. Einstein never explicitly said that consciousness is immortal. He didn't use words like soul, reincarnation, or life after death. But his notes, letters, and private reflections clearly show he believed the mind is capable of going beyond space and time. And sometimes it already does, without the person even realizing it. He called it slipping beyond the edge, a state where perception becomes non-local, global, where you don't think, you receive a signal, where you don't act, you observe. From his personal experiences, he identified 3 signs that reveal you've already been there, you've already touched the beyond. Sign 1. You don't feel like you're from here. Einstein wrote, "Since childhood, I felt like I was here, temporarily, as if I were a guest. I didn't understand the rules, and I always felt like I was observing others, but not truly part of it." This sense of detachment without fear, when you don't reject the world, but you don't fully feel part of it, he considered the first marker of non-local consciousness. If, since childhood, you've felt that, it's hard for you to accept common rules. You don't feel true belonging to any group or place. You often see things as if from the outside. Then, according to Einstein, it might not be a disorder, but evidence of a loose connection to material reality. He wrote, "Some of us are not here to adapt, but to remind others that we are not here forever." Sign 2. You often fall out of time. In the second sign, he described strange states, later known in science as dissociation, trance, or flow, but he interpreted it differently. "I notice that sometimes I forget where I am, who I am. It's as if I see myself from the outside, and in that moment, clarity comes." He spoke of moments when you lose the sense of time. The world feels slowed down or sped up. You feel like you're watching yourself from another point, and then suddenly return, unable to explain what just happened. He believed that, in those moments, consciousness temporarily exits the physical shell, and true information comes during that state. He wrote, "When I look at a formula from within, it resists. But when I step back, it appears on its own, not with eyes, not with the mind, with a field." Sign 3. Thoughts arrive out of nowhere. The final sign, the strangest and the most common. In one letter, Einstein wrote, "I don't think. Thoughts come. I can't explain. From where? Sometimes in dreams. Sometimes in silence. I just try to pay attention so I don't miss them." He said that real ideas don't come through logic. They descend, and it feels like they're not yours, but sent. You've probably experienced this. A sudden, powerful thought that couldn't be calculated, an idea that feels too big to be mine, an insight that didn't come from you. It arrived, and at the same time, a deep sense that it's true, even if you don't know why. Einstein called this a receptive state, in which you become a receiver, not a source. And if this state repeats, you might be tuned into information from beyond normal reality. What connects all three signs? In all three cases, the person doesn't feel like a local, sometimes steps outside of time and identity, and receives information that logic alone cannot produce. Einstein believed this is not coincidence, not psychology, not philosophy. It is the trace of contact with a field beyond time. He wrote, "I cannot prove that consciousness isn't from here, but everything I know inside tells me it came from there, and sometimes it wants to return." If you've ever felt this, perhaps your mind has already touched that edge, and if it keeps happening, maybe you're meant to remember more than you've ever known. If you've made it this far, you're probably asking one logical question. Why didn't Einstein speak about this openly? Why would a man who wasn't afraid to destroy scientific dogmas suddenly become cautious when it came to consciousness? The answer is simple and unsettling. He knew this knowledge would be rejected. Einstein lived in a world where science had already begun turning into a new religion, where proof mattered more than intuition, and anything that didn't fit formulas was labeled useless or dangerous. And though he felt that consciousness wasn't a product of the brain, he understood. Society and science weren't ready to hear it. I feel that consciousness is not a consequence of matter, but if I say it out loud, my words will be destroyed, and perhaps this knowledge will disappear with me. Personal letter, 1953. Knowledge as a trap. He also wrote that knowledge we're not ready for can destroy. That if we realize too early that I is not the body or the mind, if we suddenly sense that our awareness is linked to something beyond time, it can fracture the psyche, create fear, sever us from life. He didn't want to open a door behind which people might lose their grip on reality. If you accidentally see how reality is structured, you will never act the same again. And most people don't want to see. They want to believe everything is under control. Why does this matter right now? Because today, more than ever, the world demands that we tune in to our own frequency. We are surrounded by noise. We live in an era of speed, algorithms, and digital masks. And more people are losing the sense of self. They feel their thoughts are not their own. That reality is artificial. That there are two selves in their mind, and one stays silent. This is when Einstein might have said, "You're not going crazy. You're just starting to remember who you really are." What did he want to leave us? He didn't leave a ready-made formula. He didn't invent a machine to contact the non-physical field, but he left clues, markers, signs. In private notes toward the end of his life, he wrote about spiritual hygiene, just as important as physical hygiene. His advice was simple: slow down, be silent, look at the sky without thoughts. Don't believe every thought is truth. Listen to what arrives effortlessly. When you stop thinking, true thoughts arrive. When you stop searching, the essential is found. But first, you must disappear from your habitual perception. We forget that a thought is not the source, it's a receiver. That I is not a role, but an antenna. That being rational is not just logic, but the ability to discern what came from within and what came from beyond. Einstein feared that humanity would drown in technology, that we would learn to measure everything except the most important thing. Where does the very ability to feel, understand, and be aware come from? So what do we do, here and now? You don't need to drop everything and become a philosopher, but you do need to pause, even just for a moment, and ask yourself, the thought I'm having right now, is it mine? Or did it arrive from somewhere? The life I'm living, is it my path? Or am I just passing on someone else's program? Einstein believed, if a person begins asking such questions, they're already connected. They've already started the journey back home. Albert Einstein gave the world the formula for energy. But for those who read between the lines, he was trying to reveal something even greater. The formula of consciousness. Not in equations, but in feelings, dreams, silence, and the strange thoughts that just arrive. You are not the mind. You are not the body. You are the signal. And if you're reading this, you're already connected. Note from his private journal, 1955. Now you know. Now the question is not whether you believe, but whether you accept that you've already been on the other side, and whether you're ready to remember where you came from.